So we are in our first week of Advent, and Advent, according to Webster, means the arrival that has been awaited, especially of something momentous. Well, we know that in traditional Christianity, what that means is like the second coming of Jesus. There's a literal belief that Jesus will come again, and you know, that works for a lot of people. And it was interesting because Paul and I went to Silver Dollar City Friday night, and Silver Dollar City has a lot of very religious shows, and we were just so touched by the shows and by the messages, and just seeing the true faith that people have in that. And in Unity, we see it as a little in a, I can't even say a little bit different way, but we see it in a different way. The second coming for us is the emerging of our own Christedness. It's the recognition, and Dee said it in the meditation, you know, I am the Christ. You are the Christ. I'm going to invite you just to say that for a moment. I am the Christ. Yes, and you are. Charles Fillmore, our co-finder, tells us that the Christ is not the man, but rather it is a principle, and we are not here to become Jesus. We are here to become your name, the Christ. Sue the Christ, Cheryl the Christ, Laird the Christ. We are here to become that. Charles Fillmore, this is what he says about Christ. It's the incarnating principle of the God-man. Christ is the divine idea. Jesus is the name that represents an individual expression of the Christ idea. But Christ existed long before Jesus. Christ abides in each person as his potential perfection. The birth of Christ is man is the bringing forth or the birth of God's idea of man, the Christ of God. So over these this week and the next 3 weeks, we're going to be talking about just 4 of the qualities of that Christedness. And that's hope, peace, love, and joy. So today, being the first week, we are talking about hope. Now, I want to share with you that in Unity, for some reason, a few years ago, somebody said, hope isn't strong enough. We need to go right into faith. And I've never been an advocate of that, because I think that and even Charles Fillmore says, hope precedes faith. And it's important that we honor this idea of hope. I was thinking about just the idea of a few years ago, we went to Colorado, and I finally learned how to snow ski. But if I didn't have the hope that every one of the 12 times that I fell, that I would get up and actually stay up, I wouldn't have continued to try. But I can tell you, I didn't have faith that I was going to be able to ski. I just hoped I was going to be able to stay up and get down that hill. And then, after doing it a few times, I had faith. Hey, I can actually do this now. But hope is so important. As we look at hope today, we're looking at the scripture, Colossians 1:27. The whole thing is, to whom God would make known what is the riches of the glory of this mystery among the Gentiles, which is Christ in you, the hope of glory. And what that means to us, it's the great potential that is us. This is our hope of glory. Now, I'm sure we've all heard the idioms of hope. We've had a glimmer of hope. How about dashing someone's hope? Have you ever had anybody dash your hope? Hope against hope. And I really love the hope springs eternal. And I looked that one up, and it's actually from a proverb. And I think that this is so true. And it's that it is human nature to always find fresh cause for optimism. That is truly our human nature. Now, we know people that have a hard time finding that, right? But that truly is our nature to find that fresh hope for optimism. So I found these great quotes that I want to share with you about hope. Desmond Tutu said, hope is being able to see that there is light despite all of the darkness. Thich Nhat Hanh said, hope is important because it can make the present moment less difficult to bear. If we believe that tomorrow will be better, we can bear a hardship today. And how many of us have experienced that? We've been in the midst of something big, but when we have hope, we know that we're going to have a better tomorrow and the next day. And Soren Kierkegaard said, hope is passion for what is possible. And Thomas Fuller said, hope is one of the principal springs that keeps mankind in motion. Julie Donner Anderson said, hope is a beautiful thing. It gives us peace and strength and keeps us going when all seems lost. Accepting what you cannot change doesn't mean you have given up on hope. Hear this, because it is important to accept what is today. But accepting what we cannot change doesn't mean that we have given up hope. It just means that you have to focus your hope on more humanly tangible and attainable goals. And we would even make that bigger than just humanly. But I love that. Anne Lamott said, hope begins in the dark. The stubborn hope that if you just show up and try to do the right thing, that the dawn will come. This is imperative for what we're going to talk about today, this and the next one. Lin Yutang said, hope is like a road in the country. There was never a road, but when many people walk on it, the road comes into existence. So as more and more of us, and I'm sorry that didn't come up, as more and more of us, stand in that hope and we speak that hope and we live from that hope and we keep moving along in that path, then pretty soon that road comes into existence, whatever our hope is. And like I said, Charles Fillmore said that hope precedes faith. We heard the scripture that says faith is the substance of things hoped for in the video. And I really love that because, faith is born out of hope. And how I see that faith is a substance of things hoped for is that, as we hope and we hope and we hope, then it creates the substance, and it's the substance that becomes faith then. But hope is imperative for our journey, to be in that place of hope. Okay, so, and do you agree that we could use more hope in our world? Yes, we absolutely can. So I made up an acronym for HOPE, and it's holding optimistic, positive expectation. Holding optimistic, positive expectation. Now, the U.S. Air Force believes that there is a number that can help you survive in any situation, and that number is 3. Remember this number when you're in a survival situation so you understand your list of priorities. They believe you cannot survive 3 months without companionship or love, 3 weeks without food, 3 days without water, 3 hours without shelter in extreme conditions, 3 minutes without air, and 3 seconds without hope. That is how powerful they see that hope is. I also want to share with you the power of hope and the power of hopelessness. I was watching a surgeon, I believe he was, on YouTube, and this surgeon his mission is to get the word out about how powerful hope is, and he wants physicians, doctors, physicians, they're the same thing, surgeons, that he wants the medical community to prescribe hope. And so his story was that there was a gentleman who was diagnosed with, and I can't remember if that time if it was terminal or it could lead to being a terminal illness. And the guy who was diagnosed was a pretty positive guy, but he said to the doctor, he said, if there ever comes a time when you know that he was a fly fisherman, that it's time, then I need you to tell me it's time to go fly fishing. Well, the man underwent treatment, just had this really, holding positive, optimistic, positive expectation, and he got better and had many, many great years. And then at one point, whatever it was came back. And as the doctor was looking over his charts, he really felt that it was time to tell him. So he went into his room, and he said, when I went into his room, he said, I go into his room, and here's this guy who's just, he's you can feel his energy. He's bright. He's got this positive expectation. And he said, and I went in, and I said, do you remember years ago when you told me? And he said, yeah. And he said, well, it's time to go fly fishing. And he said, in that moment, he literally could see the life energy going out of him. The guy went home that night, and the next morning he got a phone call from the family that he had died in the night. And the thing that this physician said was, he said, I know, he knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that the disease is not what took his life that night. It was that he took his hope away. And it's not that the disease wouldn't have taken his life ultimately, but he knew that that night it was because he took his hope away. That's the power of hope and the power of hopelessness. So, our great master teacher, Jesus, he offered hope wherever he went. If somebody was not experiencing abundance, he would say, do you not see that the fields are right before you? If somebody was didn't have enough food, he would bless the food and he would thank for it, and there would always be more than enough. He offered hope. When he came upon those who were ill, he offered hope through saying, pick up your mat and walk, or according to your faith, you will be healed. He gave hope to those who were judgmental of others, and by saying and that there was forgiveness available. And he would say, let ye who is without sin be the first to cast the stone. He gave hope to those who were themselves outcasts. And of course, we know in that time, but let's take it to today. Those who are judged and those who are made many times to feel by society as a general rule, whether it's gender, whether it's sexual orientation, education, financial, where you're at financially. And he gave that message that we're all beautiful in the eyes of God. We're all the same. And he offered hope in that. He offered hope to those who desired to experience God. And he would say, come and follow me. The kingdom is right here at hand. And he offered hope through the raising of Lazarus. And, recognizing that and saying, to any of us, what you think is impossible, what seems like something that is so solid that it cannot possibly be transformed, can be transformed. He offered that hope. And he offered hope. And I know that there are many, many of us this year who, in this past year, have lost a loved one. And he offered hope in that. He reminded us that life is eternal, and that those who have passed from this physical realm, that they are still present and they are still right here with us. Wherever he went, he offered hope. And he was saying to us, no matter what is going on in your life today, no matter what it is, there is hope. And it's important for us to start standing on that step of hope and start focusing our energy in that direction. And not only is it important for us to do that if we're experiencing something, but it's important for those around somebody who is going through a difficult time to be that voice of hope. To be that voice that is present and available and reminding the people around us that there is hope, and hold on to that hope. And I'm going to hold on. Sometimes when somebody can't hold on to that hope for themselves, I tell them, I will hold that hope for you. I will hold that light. I will hold that energy for you. And what we know is our hope is spiritual. Wayne Dyer wrote a book that said there's a spiritual solution to every problem. And in his book, he suggests that humans have only one problem from which all sub-problems flow. And that one problem is a belief that we are separate from God. It is from this feeling of being separate that we create all of our fears, which foster doubt. And, when you think about it, how often do we walk through our day in the awareness that I am the Christ? I am that. And I am that expression. Whether you know it, it doesn't change the fact that that is your spiritual DNA. You are that. And ours is to open ourselves up to it and to live more fully from that Christed beingness. Now, another story I want to tell you is from a book that I read, and I can't remember the author, but he is a psychologist. And there was a man who was a big, stocky man. He was a farmer. He worked really hard. And, anybody who knows anybody who is a farmer, you're out there, you're working from, sun up till sundown. And this man got a diagnosis that his kidneys were failing. And so this doctor brings this, goes first to the psychologist and says, this man is saying that when he goes home today, he is going to commit suicide. And so I need you to get him to the place where we can send him home today, because he does not need to be in an institution. And so you can imagine this psychologist going, wow, it's a pretty overwhelming job. But the guy comes in and he said, I'm not going to do this. And so they were able to talk enough to where the man said, if I can have 3 weeks, because he had something he had to get done on the farm. If I can have 3 weeks, and then I can start my process. And so they agreed, okay. It gave him hope. And in the meantime, he had been separate from his son. And the wife worked it out to where they reconciled. So his son came to help. 3 weeks later, he goes back to the doctor, and his levels are better. And so when he goes back to the psychologist and he talks to the doctor, and he said, okay, I'm doing better and I still have this to do. They said, okay, you can have, so many months to get this done. Offered him hope. So he goes and he gets this done. And I can't remember exactly how long it was. It was like a year and a half. And his levels kept getting better. And he got everything done that he needed to get done. Here's the thing. It wasn't that he was, quote unquote, healed physically. But during that time, the hope that he was offered helped raise his energy so much that he was able to do what he needed to do. He had that hope that he could do these things, to get these things taken care of. He moved into acceptance of what was. He didn't resist it. And he said, okay, I'm ready now. I'm ready to go do what I need to do, which was he needed to go and get dialysis. But he was a different person. That's the power of hope, you guys. This man was ready to go home and take his life, and moved him into being, fully present to everything that was going on, and even being able to be in a place of acceptance of this was his next step in his journey. And that's the power of it. A lot of this stuff doesn't always mean it's going to bring about a full physical healing, but a lot of times what we need more than a physical healing is we need a healing of our life, a healing of our mind, a healing of our spirit. And that's what was healed in him. And so it is so important that we ourselves are the messenger of this hope. When we say that, that Christ, that the Christ is the hope of glory, it's the hope of the world. For me, it shows up this way. We've all probably heard of the tipping point, the 100th monkey, and the 100th monkey. When the 100th monkey is doing something, all the monkeys everywhere do that same thing. Well, it's the same thing with us. And as each one of us is willing to stand more and more, and especially today, the reality is there's so much going on today that's hard for us to understand in our humanness. We're seeing all kinds of corruption that's coming to the surface. We're seeing sexual harassment that's coming to the surface. We've had so many mass shootings and just all of this stuff that feels very ugly and very hard for us. And I'm going to be the first person to say, I've struggled with this. I've had to step back at times and go, I don't get it. But at the same time, I've known how important it is for me to come back to center and to be one of the people that can offer hope, to recognize that all of this has to come out. Anything that is unlike the light itself has to come out into the light so that it can be transformed. And what's happening now, we are just having a lot of stuff coming out into the light, right? But I believe that's because there's been such a yearning, such a deep desire in the souls of mankind for something different than what has been. We're tired of the status quo. We're tired of the separation. We're tired of the fact that there are people, even just in our community. Rare Breed is an organization that takes care of homeless youth. Homeless youth! It's bad enough that there's homeless adults. There's homeless youth in our community and all over. There are people who don't have enough food to eat, don't have shelter, don't have insurance. They don't have the ability to get the medications that they need or whatever it is. And I believe that there's been such a deep yearning in the soul of mankind that it's finally just bringing all this stuff to the surface so that light can transform it. But the way that it's going to move, you guys, is through each and every one of us standing more solidly in our Christedness. And today we're talking about being the voice of hope, being that voice of hope when everybody else is going, this is the worst thing, the world is not the world that I know. And I'm going to say, thank God it's not the world that we know, because we're creating a new world. We're creating a new order. And we are the ones to be that voice in the darkness, to be that light in the darkness that reminds others, Here's the thing, as we're seeing people and we're hearing these stories, what you and I have to do is we have to remember to separate the behavior from the being. And we have to remember that behavior, those actions, which we would set healthy boundaries on, we will stand for what is right. But our job is also to be able to look at that person and to know that they are divine beings, that they are purely and perfectly loved by God, just as we are. There is no exception. In the universal contract, there's no exceptions. We are all divine, every single one of us. And if we get mired down in making people bad and wrong, the beingness itself, then we're adding to the darkness. And we're here to add to the light. Yes? We're here to add to the universal consciousness of hope and of love and of goodness and of the power of this and how it can transform our world. And so it's important for us to speak in those situations and sometimes be very uncomfortable, because we're going to have people say to us, you're such a Pollyanna, you're crazy. And we have to stand solidly and say, but I know the greater truth in my being. And I know that love is here, that God is here, that light is here, that life is here, that hope is here, and that it will transform. And I am going to stand solidly in that. And I am going to bring that into every situation in my life. Can we do that? Yes. It's easy to say yes to. It is. And it's okay. And here's the thing I always want to say. When we haven't hit the mark that we would like to hit, it's simply feedback. And we can say, you know what? Oh, that didn't feel good to me. I didn't stand in that. If I can go back and do something about it, I will. But if not, then I know what I want to do from this point on. And that's that I want to be the light. Do you want to be the light? Let's say, I want to be the light. I choose to be the light. I am the light. Because I am the Christ. Because I am the Christ. And God is so pleased with each and every one of you. And even if at this moment you're thinking, oh, how could the divine mind be pleased with me? I haven't lived up to it. It doesn't matter. That's how much you're loved. That's how much you're adored. You are completely seen. And our greatest gift to this creation is to be fully expressing our Christedness. And I know that we can. And I know that we will. And we are changing the world one person at a time. Just imagine if your choice to show up was the tipping point. And it can be. And it can be. So I say to you, to each and every one of you, I behold the Christ in you. I behold the light in you. I behold the hope that you are, the love that you are, the joy that you are. I behold the Christ in you. And namaste. Namaste.